Good afternoon and welcome to episode 41 of the Jacksonian. As I'm yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the host of Locked On Boston College and the publisher of Eagle Insider from 247 Sports, AJ Black. As we'll be going over quite a lot about the Boston College Eagles, including the 2024 schedule, our take on Bill O'Brien, the strengths and weaknesses to look out for, the media days, and much, much more. And let me tell you something, folks. It's gonna be a wild ride. How you doing today, AJ?
Hey Jackson, thanks for having me on. I am doing great. It's finally cool here in Massachusetts. We've been in a heat wave for like 2 weeks, and starting to feel a little cooler, which means football's right around the corner.
Oh yeah. I mean, down here in Bama, it's awful.
Mhm.
Like we're miserable from the heat. Me personally, I don't really like the cold because like I'm like a little birdie. I'd be miserable.
Yeah, I'm a skier, so I live in the cold. Yeah, I can handle. For me, I like the cold a lot more than the heat, but I get it. I get it. You got to be cold blooded to deal with that kind of stuff.
That's pretty cool, man. And would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, man. So I am the editor of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Sports Network. We're the premier Boston College site out there. Like, if you want Boston College news, I have a great team of writers. I've been covering BC for 12 years now. Time goes by fast. I started off. I'm a BC graduate, and then I just started writing with a bunch of friends, and we were just doing blog stuff back in the days of Blogspot, and a friend of mine connected with me. He's like, "Hey, I have the site on SB Nation. Do you want to come and write?" Started doing stuff over there, learn the ropes, learn how to do the whole writing thing because I did not go to college for writing, and picked up all that. And then ended up over on SI for the Fan Nation stuff that they were doing, and then I've been at this is my third year, going on my third year at 247. I love it there. I do a lot of writing on recruiting, football, basketball. We've added baseball, hockey, women's lacrosse. We have coverage on all of that. And then on top of that, I have my daily BC podcast. I'm the only, BC is not the biggest fan base, but I am the only daily Boston College podcast. There's a lot of other podcasts out there that do, stuff here and there or whenever they feel like it. But I do 5 days a week all year long. And part of this is because I've grown my brand and who I am. Part of this is because I love Boston College and I've always loved it. Um, and it's just become part of part of my life. It's part of what I do.
That's pretty awesome, man.
Nope.
And I'll and if you're looking for top-notch Boston College insider knowledge, like Boston College football, basketball, and all the other sports, go to AJ Black because he is a go-to for Boston College athletics. I know he's my go-to.
I'm glad I am, Jackson.
Well, we'll start this show on a really happy note because I thought it was gonna be like, oh great, more realignment. But luckily, there's not gonna be for the time being.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, good. I cut you off.
it's all good. It is all good. So no realignment, no problem, and we can just chill out. Well, a lot of other people will chill out with NCAA football 25. And you've been pretty happy with the release. What did you think about it?
I like it a lot. I'm a dad. I have two kids, so my time of when I can play, especially during the summer when my oldest is out of school, is limited to certain times. So I have not been able to dive in. I joked last night on Twitter I was going to play for 6 hours, but I played for like an hour and a half, and then I was like going to bed. But I've played like Road to Glory on it. I've played a bunch of different game, just like play now type of stuff. I haven't done the dynasty yet. I'm getting myself pumped up and learning all the controls, which it feels like I have forgotten. And I'm getting better. I started off terrible, but it's fun. I mean, the BC playing as Boston College is really cool. Some of the traditions that they have at BC are included. Not all of them, but they got a good chunk in there, like the touching the eagle going out. some of the music that they use and stuff like that. I know a lot of folks are really pumped about it, and I can see why. It's a fun game, and it's just as you get more and more into it and get better at it, it gets even more fun.
Yeah, I was kind of like, I'm thinking about getting a PS5, but I'm like, nah, I'll wait a few more months on that.
I did a little extra side work so I could convince my wife because I had a PS4 and I was like, oh well, I don't have that. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write the preview for Lindy's and the preview for what was the Athlon Sports. I wrote BC previews for both, and I'm like, I'm gonna put my checks for those. That's my PS5 money, and it's not taken out of any of our money, so I can get this video game. So she's like, okay. I'm like, all right, and I'm doing it for business, so maybe it's a tax write off too, right?
There you go. Well, I mean, it is for business, so
I
there
mean,
we
I
go.
talk about it on my podcast and on the website, and I did a stream. So I kind of, my father-in-law is a tax accountant, so I can help him. He can help me figure out how to do it.
Nice. There you go. That's a win right there.
Oh yeah,
Well, speaking of wins, in spite of the fact that Jeff Halfley left for the Packers defensive coordinator job, you guys got Bill O'Brien to be the Nets head coach. Now, some people kind of balked at it, but they only looked at the era from the Houston Texans where he was the head coach and a general manager, but
yep.
they didn't look at the job he did at Penn State. And I'll be honest, I can see him taking Boston College back to where Tom O'Brien had him and where Jeff Jagodinski had him. But what do you think, AJ?
Uh, I think it took as you said, it took a bad situation. I mean, Jeff Halfley left BC in the lurch. Like the timing of it couldn't have been worse. It was the end of January. All of the coaching carousel was basically done. You know, most coaches were already in their new spots, and many of the guys, I would have thought if Halfley got canned, they would have gone after guys, like Bob Chesney, who ended up at James Madison. There's a few other names that were out there. They already got new jobs, so Bill O'Brien falls in their lap, and it took a bad situation and made it great because Bill O'Brien is about as good as a hire as BC could make, and arguably the biggest hire that they've made in a long time. Because you look back at what BC's done at coaches, right? You brought in Jeff Halfley. There was excitement when he came in, but he was unproven. He had been just a coordinator. He hadn't done much. His enthusiasm got people going, and there were some good games that when he first started. But he was what he is. You had Steve Adazio, no one liked that hire when he was hired. You had Frank Spaziani, same thing, no one liked it. And then Jeff Jagodzinski was just I believe he was an internal promotion when Tom O'Brien left for NC State. So it's been a long time since BC's made a hire like this, and they're putting money into it, which is great. Like this is the first, BC is starting to show that they're willing to spend to win. Uh, O'Brien, getting to meet him and watching practice and getting to see the way he runs everything. He brought along with him Burge Nigerian, who many folks who don't know the Patriots would know who he is, but he was Bill Belichick's right hand man. He was the guy that did a lot of the logistical stuff that kept Belichick, who everyone knows as Mr. X's and O's. He was the guy, the brains behind that. So you're going from Jeff Halfley, who I mean, he would even be the first to tell you, was learning on the job, to Bill O'Brien, who knows what he's doing, and he has a guy helping him with all the other extraneous crap that coaches at college have to deal with, the stuff that was burning Jeff Halfley out. You do all that. You steal the strength and conditioning coach from Florida, from the Gators, and you're starting to see that this program is starting to get things rolling. And I know that there's been some pieces about his comments about Nuke Hopkins, and I know some Bama fans didn't particularly care for him, even though he was putting up godly numbers at Alabama. But he's a New England guy. He's from Boston. He went to St. John's Prep, which is a pretty big school up here. And his family's from around this area. He's got a son who's got a health issue that needs the care that Boston has. He's going to make a big difference at Boston College, both on the recruiting trail and just profile of the program itself. And I can't wait to see what the team looks like because there's talent there. With the good coaching, I can't wait to see what they're going to be able to do that they weren't able to do under Halfley.
It's gonna be fun seeing what happens, and Thomas Castellanos, the QB. I've seen some amazing plays he made last year, and one in particular in the fourth quarter against Northern Illinois, Week 1. I got to be honest, I felt like I was watching Frank Tarkenton and Archie Manning all in one.
Yeah, he's something. That play was crazy, and his whole story with that whole story last year with him becoming the starting quarterback was crazy because Jeff Halfley, first of all, as a media member, he had closed practices. So as a media person, I had no idea what was going on. And it was stupid because Bill O'Brien opened practice up immediately. I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to just tell trade secrets or plays and whatever. But Castellanos, we had heard buzz because all you got to hear, the only access that the media had under Halfley was to go to press conferences and you get his whitewashed, stuff that would come out that is his perspective on things. But we never knew that he was that close. I mean, he came last summer to BC. You get to that Northern Illinois game, they're everyone thinking Emmett Moorhead's going to be the guy. He was the guy the year before. He comes in, he plays two, I think it was either one or two sets of downs, and they pull him. They put Thomas Castellanos in, and then Emmett Moorhead is done. You never see him again. You never hear from him again. I get it because I got to watch Castellanos play, but he's fast. He's elusive. He broke BC's single season rushing record, which was held by Tyler Murphy, who was also a good runner. And he's got a good arm. Now, at times last year, he wasn't very accurate. He also got the snot kicked out of him because he basically put everything on his back to win a game, and um, that affected. I think it was even his shoulder that was getting hurt. So that impacted him going down the stretch. But with a quarterback like Castellanos, I am very interested to see how Bill O'Brien, a guy who's worked with Deshaun Watson, a guy who's worked with Bryce Young, how he can help Castellanos with the throwing piece and the need and limit Castellanos from having to run every single play because that seemed like it was what happened last year and it helped, but it also by November he was down to a nub. And it really hurt him. So Castellanos, he's a great face of the program. He's a lot of fun. And again, we're talking about NCAA for 25. Play as him. He's a
Oh,
video game. He's a video game character you can run around with and do all sorts of crazy stuff with.
Well, if I get to a point where I decide, you know what, I'll get a PS5 and I'll get NCAA 25, I'll make sure I play as him.
Yeah, you got to try it out. It's fun.
Oh, oh yeah, I love the running quarterbacks. I've always loved them since I was a little boy.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to like the times when Mike Vick was in Madden, and I used to play those games all the time, and everybody played as Mike Vick. Um, Castellanos got pieces of that in the game, and it makes your playbook and the experience that much funner and much more fun. But also, when you watch BC play, you get to see pieces of it too.
For sure. And, I keep wondering, are there any other strengths that we need to look out for? And are there any glaring weaknesses that we have to look out for going into 2024?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at strengths of this team, I look at the offense. The offensive line I wouldn't consider a strength because there's just a few new variables in there, and you lost Christian Mahogany and uh, God, what the heck is his name? I'm totally blanking on his name. You lost two guards to the NFL, and you had to replace them. So that's not really a strength. But you look at the running backs. You have Kai Robichaux, who ran pretty well last year, and it was almost their exclusive back until he got banged up because Halfley just kept leaning on the run. But they brought in Trayshawn Ward, who was with Florida State and Kansas State for a couple of years. He's going to be good A and B with Robichaux and really kind of share the load there. I think that's great. And BC, since the time of Zay Flowers, has done a really nice job of recruiting wide receivers. Darrell Wyatt, who is from Texas, has opened some doors for the Eagles, and the reputation that Zay Flowers left has made BC actually a desirable place for wide receivers. Now they have Lewis Bond, who is very good and it has incredible chemistry with Castellanos. And then they brought in, they've got a sophomore, Jaden Skeet, who's a local kid who I think is going to be big. And Jerron Bradley, who came from Texas Tech as a transfer, he's 6'5", and height's good, but you got to watch him play. This guy's got athleticism. He's going to be a big problem for them. So I look at the wide receivers and running backs as a real area of strength. The biggest question mark has to be the defense. I look at the edge rushers as a big problem. Donovan Azaraku was third in the conference in 2022 in sacks. I think he had 8.5. He had 2 last year, and he led the team with 2. BC had 100. They were 130th in the country in sacks. They really had trouble with getting the pressure, and they didn't address any of it in the transfer portal. I don't know if it was because, and they were trying. I think it was probably more of an NIL thing because BC only has a certain amount of money to pool for that kind of stuff. So I look at the pass rush as a real area of concern. And as I said, the offensive line, I like the guys that they have there. But we sat through 2022 where BC's offensive line was abysmal when they had to switch some things around. So hopefully, moving on from Christian Mahogany, Kyle Hergel, that was his name, completely blew my mind. But there's some new names, and I think that's going to be an area to watch for as well. And I think the last piece has nothing to do with the roster itself. They play a tough schedule this year. They open up against Florida State at Florida State, who's going to be really angry after last year, and they're going to try to go scorched earth on everybody. I mean, BC played them well, but this Florida State team is going to be really, on one this year. They get Michigan State, Missouri, UNC, SMU, Virginia Tech. So they're playing a tough schedule this year. Yeah, you got it up right there. Even Western Kentucky is not a team to take
Yeah,
lightly.
they're scary.
Yeah, they always, if you're a bad defense, they're a team that can always take advantage of that. So I look at the schedule as something as something to watch for BC in this upcoming season.
Well, I really hope Boston College isn't the favorite against Western Kentucky, and I'm really hoping that they're not on CW because that's where teams get cursed in the ACC.
Sure will.
But maybe they can upset Missouri. I want to see that, honestly.
I think BC fans are looking at that Florida State game. They BC last year, and Florida State is all in there. They should have been in the playoffs. If you
Agree.
watch that game, BC had 18 penalties. I
Yeah.
was in the press box. That was awful. And they ended up losing on I think it was a face masking penalty on
Yep. Face mask. It was like,
third, and they stopped them on third down, and they were going to get the ball back, and they were moving at will at this point. And so they had Florida State last year, and I don't know. I don't think this Florida State's as good as last year. So who knows? Who knows what could happen?
that's bad. 18 penalties. I mean, no
School
wonder.
school record.
That's bad.
They had an issue. So I talked to Halfley about it at one point, and because they had been flittering between Moorhead and Castellanos. Castellanos was doing a clapping cadence while Emmett Moorhead was doing more of the standard vocal cadence, and it was screwing up one of their offensive linemen who kept getting called for actually a couple of them who kept moving pre-snap on everything because they couldn't get it down right. They ended up fixing it the next week, but they must have had like 10 pre-snap penalties in that game just because of that clap cadence versus the vocal cadence.
Well, and I know that a lot of people bought that Boston College Florida State being the Labor Day game. And
Yep.
for a while, like I bought that, but then I look back at last year's game and I'm looking at this year and I'm like, the same people that bought that this game being on Labor Day are the same people that bought that Clemson Duke being on Labor Day. Then we saw Duke pulling off that upset at home. Now I
Yep.
know Boston College on the road. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just saying, anytime there's a day where there's sloppy, where games look like they're going to be sloppy games, they usually don't turn out to be.
Yeah, and again, like a school like BC, when you have a game changer and he's got that that it factor like Castellanos has, BC will be good for at least one upset this year. I think. I think they've got enough talent, and he's enough of a game changer that if O'Brien can figure out how to best utilize him, they're gonna pull off a win that no one like you can look at the schedule and go, oh, I could see 6-6. Maybe they'll lose a game that they aren't supposed to win, but or they're supposed to win. But I'm looking at maybe there's going to be a game where they're going to pull off something people aren't expecting.
I'm thinking more like 7-5, honestly.
It depends. It depends on how this defense looks. Tim Lewis, they got a new defensive coordinator, which I think they desperately needed,
Oh yeah.
who's much more aggressive. And they're already making major moves in the recruiting in terms of adjusting some of the issues that they had. But having a new defensive coordinator, Tim Lewis, who has experience with the Steelers and Giants, he hasn't been around a while. He's an older coach, but he's seasoned, and I think he's going to be a good impact on some of the guys that just need to think less and play more instinctive. I think, which will help with a lot of the defensive issues that they had last year.
Well, and there we got the Fenway Bowl rematch at SMU on November 16th.
Yep.
That's gonna be that's a really underrated revenge game, honestly.
Yeah, I mean SMU got a tough deal last year. I mean, obviously as a Boston College fans, they were excited they just won. But if you remember, if you watched that game, it was rainy, it was disgusting, it was cold. They were playing on a baseball stadium. Their starting quarterback was out. They were playing with a backup who wasn't bad, but he couldn't do much. And BC was from what I've read and heard, was pissed off to be in that game. So they ran into a tough one. And credit to SMU, they're going to be a contender in the ACC soon because they've got a loaded fan base that can pay and drive up that NAL, so they can just basically restock through the transfer portal quickly. And I mean, you just have to go back in history to see how dominant that team could be. I think they're a sleeping giant. And, while Florida State and Clemson cry and moan about the lack of competition, with Miami, Louisville, NC State, and add in SMU and North Carolina to that mix, that conference, it's more talented than I think people are giving them credit for.
Well, and I noticed that North Carolina tends to lose that one game they shouldn't.
Yep.
I can see where Boston College is in that category of a game they shouldn't lose, but they wind up losing anyway.
Yeah, the one thing that I hate about this game, and I love to see teams from the South come up to Boston around Thanksgiving because it's cold. Like you were just saying, Jackson, you hate the cold, right? Like teams have to come up here and deal with it. But there's another side to that coin, which is the games around Thanksgiving will not have fans there. The students won't be there. The students are usually home, and most of them travel. Like BC has a huge population of kids from all over the place, so it's dead. The stadium is dead. It doesn't have the feel of like a game that when you play earlier in the year, like I'm looking at that Louisville game, right? That's a Friday night game. That's gonna be nuts. The kids are gonna be all liquored up, and it's a Friday night game right around Halloween. It'll probably be decent weather. That's gonna way different feel than what you're gonna get with UNC. But I agree with you, right? I'm not a big fan of Max Johnson, the quarterback that they got. I think that could be, I was mentioned earlier, a game that they're not supposed to win. That could be a perfect one. UNC, I could totally see them pulling off something at home.
Oh yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens in 2024, but I've got a good feeling that things are going to be going up for BC.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I said it on my podcast earlier this week. Like, they just need to basically escape this year. Like, as you said, 7-5, 6-6 would be an amazing year for BC. And then they get their out of conference schedule for 2025. I don't have it in front of me right now. Is garbage. Like I think they're playing like UMass, UConn, Army, and like I don't think they're playing anyone of any relevance. So like if you get
they got Fordham, Massachusetts, they got to
yeah.
go to Michigan State, and they got Notre Dame coming to their backyard.
Oh, okay, maybe. All right. There was I've had conversations with my co-hosts about this before, so maybe it was the conference schedule that they have, but I think they play a lighter schedule in 2025, and you'll get Castellanos back probably. My biggest concern with Castellanos, he loves BC, so I don't think it'll happen, but it's for him to have a huge year and then some blue chip school is going to call Colin, and he's going to get lured away to through the transfer portal. I have no proof that would ever happen. I just see his talent. I could see another school liking it if he blew up.
I bet if he has a great season this year, people will look at him in that upper echelon of Matt Ryan and
Yeah,
Doug Flutie.
yeah. He'd have to have a big year, and you circle that Florida State game as the potential one, right? Like
Yeah.
starting off, like that is a way to start the Bill O'Brien era, right? You get this team. Everyone's been talking about Florida State since last year. Everyone, the team that got screwed out of the playoffs, the team that wants to get out of the ACC, the team that's, built to win again, and they're going to be the favorites. And for BC, if Castellanos can go on the road and win, or I shouldn't say Castellanos, O'Brien can go on the road and win at Florida State. And again, they're going to probably be like, I think I saw 22.5 point underdogs. That would be a huge way to start your season off. And then all of your expectations for the seasons then have changed because you have then beaten probably the best team on your schedule. Missouri could be up there too. And I have no idea how they're going to stop Luther Burden, but um, that's what I kind of think. And so that Florida State game, I have like, I cannot wait to see because it could go a bunch of different ways. I mean, Castellanos could go out there way jacked out of his mind and then get smoked. He tries to do too much. Florida State's way too athletic. They get beat. Or BC battles them. And anything could happen. And that should be a good way to kind of gauge how the season's going to go.
Oh man, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens on Labor Day. Speaking of Castellanos, he and Davin Izuraku
Azaraku,
and
yep.
yep, and Drew Kendall are going to be joining Bill O'Brien in the media days next Wednesday.
Yep.
So, what's it feeling like going in the media days and afterwards?
So I don't go to them because I
Okay,
don't find I like as someone who goes to practices and does all that, like they're not going to say anything that I haven't heard before.
right.
They'll probably say even less. And honestly I don't really, and like anything I write about it, no, people around here don't even care because it's just like it's not worth my travel expenses to do it. Just put it that way. But put that aside because I was saying on my show today, there's two things that happen during this ACC kickoff. There's the team talking. You have all the guys there, and they'll answer some questions, and then you have Jim Phillips. I could care less what the players say because I've heard it all before. It's all been prepared. It's not going to be anything interesting. They worked hard. Blah 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 blah. They'll talk about the change a little bit. I want to hear what Jim Phillips has to say. I have way more interest in his comments because I'm guessing he's going to talk a lot. He's going to when he gets his chance for opening remarks, he's going to go into the graduation rate, the 7 national titles by the conference. Adding Stanford and UCLA, USC, Cal, excuse me, and SMU. He's going to talk about that. He's going to talk about probably revenue and ratings or something like that. But I want to hear people ask him about the lawsuits from Clemson and Florida State, the rumblings from the, what are they called, the Magnificent Seven, the his ideas to continue to build revenue for the conference. How is he going to bridge that gap between what the ACC has and the Big Ten and the SEC? That is way more interesting and really impacts every school in the conference at this point than whatever the kids are going to say. And yeah, I know it's a valuable experience for them and they'll have a great time, but give me Jim Phillips because I want to know what his ideas are before the ACC collapses.
Yeah, I mean, if the ACC does collapse, I think it's gonna be like the old Big East, where they're not gonna dissolve like the Pac-12 or the Southwest Conference or the WAC, but
Yep.
they'll like change names or they'll have like a bunch of teams out of left field in the conference, like a Oregon State, Washington State, Boise State, San Diego State in that conference. And then you see like East Carolina and Appalachian State in there.
Yeah. I think what you're gonna probably see at the points is I think the Big Ten. I think they only have like a couple of years on this big, humongous contract. I think the next step is gonna happen is that the bigger the SEC and the Big Ten. I think they're gonna start to expel schools out of their own conference, right? That aren't
Oh, like Temple out of the Big East and
right, right.
Baylor.
You're gonna see like Rutgers and Maryland and maybe even like in Illinois or something like that in the Big Ten and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State and the SEC. They're gonna move them out because they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And then you're gonna see more of that. I think Florida State and Clemson are probably inevitably gonna leave and do something else, but you'll probably see some of these other schools being removed from these power conferences pretty soon too. I think that'll probably be the next domino to fall.
Oh man, they're gonna be hearing that ABC always be closing,
Yeah.
always
Yep.
be closing.
Yep.
Throwing in my inner Alec Baldwin.
Yep. Yep. You gotta do
Oh,
that.
oh, have I got your attention now?
Eh,
Good. Oh man, it was perfect time to do a reference on that.
totally. You gotta do it when you gotta do it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. But yeah, we've got ourselves a very interesting 2024 season, and looks to me the only way to go is up. And the last time Boston College had a 10-win season was that magnificent '07 year with Matt Ryan and Jeff Jagodinski.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's been a while. I mean, I look at the school itself, right? That's around when I started covering it. I think it was a year after Matt Ryan. They botched the next hire because they gave it to Frank Spaziani, the hire after Jack. They first of all they fired Jeff Jagodzinski because he interviewed for the Jets job, uh,
Yeah,
which was unbelievably stupid.
right? It's like it's
Yeah,
dumb.
like
They're
that's part of.
regretting it now.
Oh yeah, and then they hired instead of doing a full high search and looking out at guys like Chip Kelly, who was interested in the job at that time, and there were other guys that were big names that were interested at BC at the time. They hired their defensive coordinator, who had no business being a head coach. He lasts 4 years. Then they go into Steve Adazio, who I the less I say about Steve Adazio, the better. Um, I'm not a big fan of that man. And then they get Halfley, and it's the time just goes by so fast. I mean, Halfley had his moments, right? Like he had a few moments, but I think he was limited, and I think that he capped out with where he was at. I honestly believe if Halfley was here this year, I would say BC would probably be around 3-9, and I would expect him to be fired by the end of the season. That's kind of where I was at with that.
Yeah, I mean, like Spaziani, like every year Boston College had the win totals drop, and Steve Adazio was just meh. I mean,
Yeah,
those coaches they look like somebody's angry dad.
yeah.
Like even the angry dads are like, we don't want to be around this guy.
Uh, yes, Adazio hated me. He
Well,
he made that very clear in a few practices.
well, his loss. That's the way I look at it.
I don't lose any sleep over it.
I don't blame you.
Yep.
But as we wrap up episode 41 of the Jacksonian with AJ Black, the publisher of Eagle Insider at 247 Sports and host of Locked On Boston College, uh, for those who would like to give a look at the latest on Boston College or discuss with you about their favorite moments, where can they find you?
Yeah, if you want to find me, go on to Twitter. I'm on Twitter at AJBlack247. Um, you can find me. Oh man, I'm like everywhere. I have social media channels everywhere. YouTube, Locked On BC. Go over to Eagle Insider. If you're a BC fan, if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to check out this AJ stuff, go over to 247. We have a message board. I have VIP content up there. That's like all the insider stuff that I know. I talk to coaching staffs, the kids. It's part of the gig, so that's what I do. But I also answer questions. I have an Ask AJ Anything. So if you have a question you want answered, my readers are always pestering me about things. Come on over there, and yeah, I hope to see you guys floating around.
There we go. You can check out AJ Black at Eagle Insider 247 and on Locked On Boston College. And as for me, I'm 149 subs away from the magic number 500 right here on YouTube at Jackson Johnson 979. And you can also give me a follow on X at Jackson09960335 and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908, where I give my takes on what's going on in the sports world here, pop culture there. And I also give my latest updates on who's on the next episode of the Jacksonian and all that sort of stuff. Until next time, this is Jackson Johnson wishing you all a happy Friday and a happy weekend, and to stay safe, stay cool, stay away from that heat.